Hello, and today we have a special guest, one of my coworkers and my first real friends here in Arizona when we moved. Uh, we have Mr. Matthew Marshall. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. Honored to be the first friend in Arizona on the podcast. Stoked on that.
Yeah, so we're just going to kind of dive right in. Um, Matthew, Marshall, where are you? Like, you're originally from Arizona.
Mhm.
So what's it like being from Arizona, like growing up here? Um, how's that been for you?
Yeah, I like that question. I like that question, especially you guys just moved here this year, right?
Yes. So we got here
Yeah,
in June of 2020, and so we're in our first year now.
Yeah, middle of the pandemic. So we haven't seen much
super.
besides our apartment and the grocery store, a couple mountains outdoors, but haven't yet got to fully explore Arizona and everything it has to offer.
Yeah, you guys came at a real rock star time too, just the middle of
Yeah.
summer in the middle of the pandemic. Um, yeah, I was actually, it's funny, I was born and raised in Chandler. So
Wow.
where we work, it's sort of a trip to like show up to work every day because that whole area was nothing when I was a kid. So
Really?
I grew up kind of in North Chandler. And even back then, like Chandler, downtown Chandler has always been like a pretty tight knit Mexican American community. And like downtown Chandler, especially when I was a kid growing up, like it was a little dicey. Like you didn't really hang out down there. I used to go skateboarding down there with friends. And I had some friends that went to like Chandler High, like in the middle of downtown.
Hmm.
And eventually I started leading a youth group and spent a lot of time down there. But even that changed like almost overnight. It feels like it just started happening really fast. And so we moved to South Chandler. People who are like watching this are gonna be like, what the hell is he talking about? South Chandler and shit. It's a suburb of Phoenix. But back then, like south of the 202, there was nothing. There was just like nothing out there. I remember we moved out there, and before we moved out there, we moved into an apartment,
Hmm.
and my parents showed us the plot where like our house was going to be built. And we grew up like kind of like lower, not lower middle class, but my parents didn't have a lot of money. There, my dad was a police officer, my mom was a nurse, and so it took a while until like they started making enough money to like put a down payment on a house. And the house we moved into was really nice, but it was in the middle of nowhere. There was like dairy farms and dirt. And I remember we moved out there. I was like, this sucks. Like, why are we doing this? It was so remote that like in high school, I used to like sneak out and like I would sneak into a train museum off of Arizona Avenue to like go smoke cigs like late at night with my friends. Like
Really?
that was like the thing to do. It was like it was so remote that like you could sneak into a train museum. Like that's kind of
Right.
like an outdoor train museum in the middle of a bunch of like farms. It's really strange. But yeah, growing up out here, it's kind of weird. It's also, I've talked about this with a couple friends. My family is like very recent immigrants. So my grandma was born in Poland and my grandpa was born in Austria.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
really?
And yeah, and so after World War II, half of that family moved to Australia and the other half came here to America and ended up settling in Phoenix in like the 60s, I think, 50s or 60s. And my aunt and my mom were the first ones born in the US. My other aunt, this shows how deep our Austrian roots are. My other aunt is named Ingeborg Algenater Schmidt, and she was born in Austria, and she lives in Scottsdale now. But yeah, it's a trip. So growing up out here, you never really felt like you belonged, I guess.
Ah,
That was a long-winded answer, but it's just strange. It's strange seeing it change, but it's a cool state. How do you
Do
guys
you,
feel about it?
well, I was just going to ask, do you still feel that way? Because one thing we have noticed, we're moving here, we're at the post office getting things set up, and all the time we hear the comment, oh, well, no one in Phoenix is from around here, right? So
True.
to find a native Arizonian that still lives here is like a
Mhm.
gold,
yeah, like
it's so rare.
Yeah.
So do you still feel like, oh, I feel a little bit like an outsider, or do you feel a little bit more now that there's so many people from so many different places that it's a little easier to find that sense of community?
Yeah, it hasn't really hindered my sense of community. I think it's just worth taking into account, like that if you're not if you're not Native American or from Mexico, like you're the newest person in town, realistically,
Yeah.
you know? And like, there's like layers to it, right? So like, I feel like a local because I was born and raised in Chandler, and like, this is my home. And like, I know
Yeah.
it like the back of my hand. The weather doesn't surprise me. The summers don't surprise. Like I'm born and bred in
prepared, yeah.
Arizona. Yeah, exactly. Like I've been here for a while. But at the same time too, it's like if you're hyper aware that your family isn't from here, it's always a little bit hard to feel like you're plugged fully into the community because you know you have like family somewhere else or like um yeah, I don't know. I think I've just been kind of aware of that. And I've been really lucky because my friends, you know, Chandler's kind of in a weird spot. Like you drive south for like 20 minutes and you're on the reservation, or
I
west
didn't
for
know that.
20 minutes and then you're in the yeah, you're like right, we're like Phoenix
Right
ends,
there.
and then the I think it's the River uh reservation is right there. So like you're slammed up against that. So I've always had like a really diverse group of friends, and that's kind of always helped me feel a little bit more tied to here, where like I know my friends are from here, they were
Yeah.
born and raised here, and they have like a real authentic experience of living in Arizona. And I think that kind of helps out. But yeah, it is super rare to find somebody else born and raised here. Like if I see someone else, I'm like, oh, like you get it. Like, you
Well,
Yeah.
that's funny, like, because like so many people that we work with are have actually like moved in here. Like Tammy's from like talks about like Mexico a lot. Like
Mhm.
I know Dale is from like he grew up traveling around a lot and like lived
Yeah.
partially in South Carolina. I know, like
Oh, really?
yeah, like
Mhm.
Rachel like has family in New York. So like so many people have like moved around and like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many different
Tons.
places.
Tons. And especially in Great Hearts, they like to like hire, God knows how I got hired there, but they like to hire out, and they, you know, they like kind of look, and it's interesting. So I started for Great Hearts 6 years ago,
Oh, nice.
and I started in like another Gilbert campus, and then the Chandler campus, because I taught at two campuses simultaneously,
Mhm.
because I was actually like trying to lose my mind and go crazy, and like
Yeah,
figured
sounds
out
like
that's how
really
you
hard
like
to
fast
go
track
working
it.
at two.
It sounds like you're preparing for the pandemic, like doing 2 jobs at once. Are you like
Yeah,
a
just
pro now?
kind of steadily like just burning myself out. So then like when everyone's burnt out, I'm like, hey, I already figured this.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how to do this. But the school that I worked at is like literally at the old Fry's that I used to go to. Like it used to be a grocery store, and now it's like a school. And so every day I'd show up for work and I was like,
That's
what the fuck
trippy.
am I doing here? Like
Yeah.
this is a straight up grocery store that I now teach at. But um yeah,
So
it's interesting seeing how many people move here. And you guys are, you know, I'm interested to see how you guys feel about it because it's your first year here. Granted, it's kind of a shit show of a year to move here, but
yeah, it has definitely been a little bit of a shit show, but we are like we've enjoyed it. Like I feel like we haven't been out to explore much,
I
and
I would say we haven't been out to explore like urban spaces. I feel like we've
Mhm.
done a lot of, characteristic Phoenix things.
yeah,
Some of the hikes
I
that
would
we've
not
gone
say
on,
I've
like,
gone on one hike. So
okay, well,
I
I've
would.
gone on several because I like doing those sorts of things. But yeah, so I think it's more just that like exploring urban spaces or meeting more people
Yeah,
outside of just our work, which is, I mean, as a working adult, it's hard to meet new people, I guess. But
Mm,
at least once I started going into the office more and meeting my coworkers and getting to know them a lot more regularly was really helpful and made me feel like I'm meeting people, doing things, like
yeah,
even though I'm
more
not,
connected.
yeah, just more connected. So I'm glad that William's been able to have that experience more steadily from the beginning when we moved here. Uh,
mhm.
but yeah, he's always got the good recommendations for like, oh, let's order from this place, let's do this.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I think he's more that type of person that values that and seeks that out. So
Mhm.
I know that he's probably missing that a little bit more than I am.
Mm. I feel you on that. I'm kind of wired that way too, where I enjoy like it's funny, I'm very much an introvert, but when I'm around people, I like really enjoy it, but I can't do it too much because then I get burnt out. But
Yeah,
like I love going to shows, I love going to bars, I love going to restaurants, and like downtown Phoenix is it's wacky because most of it's like garbage. Like it's kind of like a like I love Phoenix, but most of Phoenix is like lame as hell. But then there's sort of this like undercurrent of like really cool groovy restaurants and like venues and like I've been very lucky to have some friends that kind of work in that environment. And there's a lot of good stuff, but like you're saying, like this is like just the worst year to try to get into it because nobody can do anything, everything's closed. But once things start opening up, I think you'll it's easy to kind of get plugged in too. I think Phoenix can feel a little standoffish, but realistically, everyone just is like, I think everyone's walking around like thinking the same thing of like, what the hell am I doing in Phoenix? So I think it's like everyone kind of, it's easy to connect somehow because everyone's already confused about what the hell they're doing here. So it's a cool place. I think you guys, once things open up, you guys will have that opportunity to kind of venture around. And the state itself, that's one thing that like took me forever to learn, is this state is like insanely gorgeous. It's like one of the coolest places in the country. But when I was a kid, I hated it. I was like, the desert sucks. It's hot as shit. It's boring. And like, I wanted to like live in California or do whatever, move to another city. And it wasn't until college that I got the chance to kind of explore, like you guys are saying, go on hikes and like go camping and go up north and even down south towards like the Mexico border. It's a really cool place. There's like literally everything. We have, 2 hours south where you're in Mexico at the beach, 2 hours north, you're in the middle of the pine forest. So you're like literally just kind of in the middle of all sorts of different things here.
So you mentioned it earlier that like you have some friends that skateboard. So is that like, are you a skater? Like, what would you classify yourself? Like, how would you classify yourself in terms of skateboarding and like, would you say how would you talk about skateboarding? Basically?
Yeah, I consider myself a skater still. I never I won't, anybody who's really good at skateboarding, I'm not going to dazzle them, they'll be like, okay, like this guy can skateboard a little bit. But it's like, it was the first thing that when I was growing up, it was the first thing that I felt like somewhat accomplished at. I was sort of like this really chubby, awkward kid growing up and like was terrible at sports. And my cousins in San Diego grew up skating. And so they handed me like this hand-me-down like Element board. I think I was 12 years old and that thing sucked. It was like garbage. It would like veer off. The trucks are too tight. I didn't know what I was doing. And I got hurt all the time because they like knew how to skateboard. Mm-hmm. So I tried to keep up
trying to do their tricks.
Oh yeah. I was like this chubby little like meatball. I was like 4'8", like 120 pounds, 140 pounds or whatever, just trying to like roll around with them. And like, but it was like really exciting too, because it like was a little dangerous. You get a little hurt, but like when you landed a trick, you're like, whoa, like I'm the coolest person I've ever seen. Like you just get this huge confidence boost. And yeah, it honestly helped develop like a huge part of my character and who I am and what I'm comfortable with and the things I choose to do and how I choose to kind of even present myself, the way I look. It like severely influenced me since I was 13, even to today. I just went skating last week and like ate shit. Like I got to stop bringing my wife to the skate park because I always get wrecked when she's there. But
have you ever had to go to the hospital because of a like injury or anything?
Yeah, I actually got shoulder surgery right before the school year. So I've been like rehabbing that and like I tore my labrum 2.5 years ago skateboarding and I didn't realize I did that. Like I just messed my shoulder up and was like, well, it doesn't feel right. And like eventually went to see a doctor and they're like, yeah, dude, like your shoulder's garbage. Like you need surgery. So that was like the first major, like I've done a bunch of goofy stuff, it's concrete. Like you're going to lose no matter what, no matter how good you are.
You're not winning that battle.
No, you can't body concrete. It'll slap you back. But, and that's kind of the exciting thing too. I think skateboarding is really cool because it's kind of like a sport. It's super physical. And I think much like other physical sports, the nice part about it is like when you have that in front of you and you're doing it, you can't be like thinking about taxes or like all the grades you haven't, like you can't focus on anything else. Cause if you do, you're going to get hurt. So you have to be like hyper focused. And it's a good way to like tune all the bullshit out, you know, like all the stress and everything else. Like it doesn't matter how stressful work is if you're trying to like grind a rail, because it's nowhere close to as stressful as the rail at that moment. So you just have to like get into it. So it's been a really cool experience. It's been, yeah, sort of like this. That's kind of the turning point in my life, I think, when I was like 13, is like when I got on a skateboard and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. To the point where I like wanted to drop out of high school at 16 and like I was all in, I was fully in. My parents were like, shut up. That's not happening. But yeah.
So what is the coolest trick you've ever done? Or like trick you most proud of ever accomplishing?
That's a fun one. I was reading that question and it made my like head spin, you know, because there's, you know, 13 or 16 years of skateboarding under my belt. And so like, you know, realistically, I remember the first flip trick I landed was a heel flip and it looked like crap. Like it was like rolling on the ground and like I could barely get off the ground, but I remember landing on it. And I remember that feeling so well of just being like,
landed.
no way. Like that just happened. I'm like, I remember looking down and being like, whoa, like it's upright. I'm standing on it. I'm not on the ground. Like what just happened? And so like that initial feeling is enough. And like, there's been a few tricks. There's like one trick. It's not the hardest trick I've ever pulled off or like the coolest one, but it's like one of the tricks that I learned that was really, really hard. And for some reason at my, 29 years of age, I can still do it really well. It's the trick I pull out at the skate park if like there's some young kids there that are like trying to show off, like I'll have to pull the old dog move and be like, yeah, well, I can still do this. And then it's a nollie 360 flip. So you like put pressure on the nose with your front foot and pop and then spin it 360 degrees. And then with your back foot, flip the board at the same time. So like the board spins and flips and then you catch it in the air and land on it.
What?
And yeah, it's kind of,
it's a layup full twist. Like the board is doing that.
Yeah, my body can't do that. I can maybe jump half a foot in the air and then I'm going to try not to fall. But yeah, that's like one of those tricks where like, if like there's a kid who's like trying to like, go hard that night and he's tearing it up. Like, even if he's 10 times better than me, I'll still do that trick in front of him. He'd be like, all right.
He'll be like,
yeah,
respect.
Yeah. Like, all right, this old dog's still doing it. Like it's one of the, it's definitely the trick that I'm pretty proud of still, that like, if I do that in front of people, they're like, oh, okay, he skates. Like he's a skateboarder. So yeah.
Where are the best skate parks in Arizona? Like if you had to go to one skate park in Arizona,
Chandler,
where would you go?
480 locals only, dude. Holding that shit down. Jeez, I love that place. I love that place because it's like
what's it called again? I'm sorry,
it's called Schnediger Park. So it's like the main skate park in Chandler. But there's a few really good spots out here. Like Phoenix started building a lot of skate plazas and like big skate parks. So one of like the biggest skateboarding competitions in the US is in Arizona. I think it's in Glendale. It's called the Phoenix AM. And it's like the way skateboarding works is like, there's like people that are sponsored, they get flow. So they'll get like a couple free products. And then AM, like you're on the team, but you don't have any pro models. So you're not generating revenue through sales. You're generating like revenue through competitions and like ads and stuff. And then pros, like you have a skate deck that you put out or a pair of shoes that you put out. And then if people buy that, like you get, income off of that as well. So the amateur competition is like, they're basically pros. They just don't have their own pro model. So it's gnarly as hell. And it's super fun to watch, but that gets like a lot of people all over the world watch that competition because it's one of the big ones. And like Cowtown Skate Shop in Tempe in Phoenix, they're like one of the best known skate shops in like the United States for sure. So it's cool. It's a fun community. So there's a bunch of really good parks. I love Chandler because it was like one of the first big cement parks in Arizona. And it's sort of
built specifically for skating, right?
Yeah. It was built specifically for skateboarding, and like to the point where like if you had a scooter or bike, you weren't allowed in the park because it was like you can't have anything with two wheels. Written in the rules on this like big metal plate. We're like, hell yeah. And now they started letting scooters in, and that was a huge mistake. So
oh really?
Oh, it's like a minefield. It's like a bunch of like 8-year-olds like zipping around in front of you, and like I'm 190 pounds. I'm probably going like close to 20 miles an hour. So if I slam into a kid, like they're gassed. So it's like a little intimidating.
like defy gravity when there's like little children running all over the place and like
Yeah, it's
land
like
on you.
dangerous.
Like
Yeah, like I might kill a kid accidentally, and then that's bad news. Like, what do I do
Yeah.
after that? You know?
right. It's like this
So-
is not gonna be fun for me, but trust me, it's gonna be worse for you.
Yeah,
Like
hell yeah, yeah. Like I'm not stoked on this, but like you're gonna be less stoked. Like this is gonna suck
Right.
really bad for you, and then you have to deal with like parent. Like I've had that happen a few times where like you just like accidentally start your kid while like going to a ledge, and then like their mom is like, "What the hell are you doing?" And you're like, "Your 9-year-old's
Yeah.
like jumping in front of me. Like I
Not
can't."
paying attention,
Right.
Yeah, I live. There's
which
nothing I can
9-year-olds
do.
tend to do.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? They seem to be really good at forgetting what they're doing. But yeah, so Chandler
So,
Park, I think that one's my favorite for sure.
nice.
so we see the paintbrushes there in the background. So like
This is a green screen.
you are an artist, and actually like you're supposed to do an art show in the fall, but it got canceled. Uh,
Yeah.
but so like talk a little bit about like being an artist and like how you got into that, and just talk about
We're
being an
getting
artist.
into it now. We're getting into
Yeah.
deep water, guys. um, yeah, so I started making artwork. I think I've always wanted to be an artist when I was a kid. Like I've always loved it. I've always loved like doodling. I remember in 4th grade, like at recess, I wouldn't play at recess. I would just bring paper out and draw Dragon Ball Z characters like
Oh,
all day because that was like the coolest shit I could think to do. Um, so I've always loved art. My great uncle in New Mexico was an artist. He lived in LA in the 60s and like did lithography and like a few other printmaking things, but he was also a weird fact, he was also a spy for like what became the CIA. He was
what?
yeah, he worked in like, but it sucks because he was like a narc, dude. It kind of sucks. He was like sort of a rat. He like would spy on the art community during like the Red Scare to see if anybody was a communist. And you're like, that kind of
Oh,
sucks.
Americans against communism.
Yeah, dude, like that wasn't very cool. But he had some really interesting work, and he made a really good career for himself. And so, like at a young age, I was exposed to art, but I also had no clue. Like nobody in my family except for him is anywhere close to the art world. Like most of my family's military or policing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So like getting into art was sort of this tricky thing. Like I didn't take it seriously in high school, and I fell in love with it. I started painting when I was like 17 or so. And then was not planning on going to college, but like got a small scholarship, and my parents were like, you need to go to college. Like and my parents admitted it. They actually told my wife this not too long ago, but they were like legitimately surprised that I got accepted into college and got a scholarship. They like were afraid that it was going to come out that the scholarship was for someone else. So they were like, gotta get on
They
that.
got you.
I mean, they were listening when you were 16 saying, I'm gonna drop out, like this isn't for me.
Straight up. And it wasn't like, and
There were
like,
signs.
yeah,
Yeah,
to
this is
clarify,
not
it wasn't,
unforeseen.
yeah, like I've always kind of been a similar personality to I am now. Like I think I'm pretty genuine, and I like to talk to people. I care about people, but I've also been like a shithead simultaneously my entire life. Like I've always just kind of been an idiot and like done dumb shit. And like high school was no different. Like I was failing classes, and like the first art class I took in high school, I got a D in. So it's like there's
What?
zero reason why I should be where I'm at right now. But it took me a while, and then I realized like if you actually study and not go to like dumb like I would go to Hooters for like a study session with like my teammates on a math test, and they're like, that's not how any of
Yeah,
that
I
works.
don't think math was the subject you were studying.
No, not at all. Like it was just like we're idiots. And so I eventually went to college. I went to ASU on a small scholarship, and I was like, all right, like if I'm going to school, I'm going to study what I want. And my parents are like, we don't give a shit. Like just
Yeah,
go.
you're in college. Yeah.
Yeah, who cares? Like just go do your
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And I was encouraged to go study art and study painting, and I stuck to it. And I remember like my second year in, I was like, this is it. Like this is what I want to do. Like this is my career goal. And it just clicked. It's something about it clicks where when I'm working in my studio and making a painting and going through the process of making a painting and developing an idea, I feel like the most myself, if that makes sense. Like I feel,
Like you're in your
I
own.
feel, yeah, I feel more capable there than in anywhere else in my life. Like that's the moment where I'm like, oh, I can do this. And not like, and it sounds a little like, it's sort of awkward to describe that mindset because like you have to have humility, but at the same time,
Yeah.
like when I go to
Yeah.
a museum and
Extremely confident.
when I go to a museum and I see like, you know, Velasquez or like these big names that stars or even contemporary artists that I'm a big fan. Sorry, my dogs are losing it real quick.
Okay.
Even like a big contemporary artist right now, I look at their work on a wall and I'm like I could do something like that. Like I could probably make a painting that good. And it's just kind of stuck with me since I was 19 or something. I've been doing it for 10 years now.
So what is your process for like creating art? Like, do you need to like just sit in your room and kind of visualize? Is it just, I'm just going to go at it and see what comes? Like,
It's a little bit of everything, I feel like. You know, I've tried to pin it down, but then as soon as I feel like I got it, it just changes on me. And it's like, well, that doesn't work anymore. So
yeah,
it can be anything, you know. I might be reading a book and like a line sticks out to me. And I think like, oh, this is a really interesting concept. Or this sentence sends my mind into kind of like this direction. And so maybe I'll focus on a sentence and try to build an image off of that. Or I'll do like collage work. I have like a whole bookshelf in here over here. Most of that's like books from Goodwill. It's like World War II imagery or like, you know, travels from India, like all sorts of things. And then I'll cut like images out of that and collage it together and see what looks interesting. And then from there, maybe try to build a painting off of that. And then as I'm working on a painting, oftentimes like I go into it with sort of like, this is what I'm going to try to do. This is what I'm going to try to say with it. And, you know, you kind of try to
roadmap to begin with.
yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to be like, you know, just dead in the water. Like, all right, I have a green canvas. Like, now what the fuck do I do? Like, I'm just staring at nothing. So you want to like try to get yourself like you want to try to build a foundation rather quickly so that you don't feel like you're just dead in the water, because it's like it's a really uncomfortable feeling to like know you have to start a painting, but then just have like a blank canvas. You're just like, oh, I don't know. But then once the painting gets started, 9 times out of 10, it changes directions 5 or 6 times. And a lot of that is like, I'm not an artist that like thinks of an image and then tries to create that image precisely. Like the process of using the materials is like what I'm really focused on, is that experience. And taking a material that I'm somewhat familiar with and constantly kind of pushing it and seeing what it can do and how I can use the things I'm learning from that process to make an image look more interesting or to add a new layer of dialogue to an image. Because I think that's sort of, in technical terms, as an artist, like as a painter in the 21st century, you are struck with the fact that there's thousands of years of painting history. And if you want to take it seriously, you want to try to insert yourself into, I mean, we've been painting on walls since 40,000 years ago. So it's like, it's a lot to process and a lot to try to think about when you're working on it. And so I think I'm really focused on using the material to say new things and to express myself in new ways. And when I think I've done that well, then I'm happy with the painting. If I don't think I've done that well, then I keep working on it, or eventually I just kind of throw it away or something.
So do you feel like, you mentioned this long history of human painting, do you feel now like more difficulty or kind of more focus in terms of now you have, as you know, you're creating visual media, but you're also in today's 21st century competing with the flashy, you know, electronics, changing things, you know, so do you feel that that influences how you're interacting with the media, how you're trying to get new things out of the media, or that you're
Absolutely. That's a really good point, because, you know, painting is a slow image. It's like a very slow, it's the difference between like watching a movie and reading a book. You know, you can kind of get the same information out of it, and even some of the same pleasure, or some might be more pleasurable than others, but there's part of it where like you need to slow people down when it comes to a painting, and that is extremely hard to do. It's extremely hard to do. And a lot of how you promote yourself now is on social media. Like Instagram is the main thing to be using.
Oh,
but
you
it's a
got to drop us your handle.
Oh yeah, I'll do that right now. Actually, give me a sec. I'll do it later.
Yeah.
It's it's tough because it's a 2-inch by 2-inch image, you know, and like some of the paintings I make are like, you know, some of them are right here. You know, that's a really large painting,
Holy
and
smokes. Yeah.
yeah, trying to show that on a 2-inch by 2-inch format and
Yes.
that same impact that it has is almost impossible. And so it's tough because then you find yourself trying to cater toward making images that fit this
This platform. Yeah.
yeah, this platform, this small medium size, but then you also know in the back of your mind, like, man, that 5-foot painting is a bad mofo. Like that thing's way better than these small paintings I'm knocking out. But like that doesn't look cool on 2 inches, where these small ones are like, you know, they're just refined enough where people are like, wow, cool.
Right. And you're
So
like, if I wanted something to be 2 inches, I would have painted it 2 by 2.
exactly. Yeah. Like I don't I still am, I guess I'm wired in the way where like I want people to see it in person and I want to slow them down. Like I want somebody who goes to a show of mine to see my work and kind of pause for a little bit. And I think my paintings do have that effect somewhat, but because it's sort of difficult to show that via social media, it's been a bit of a challenge. And people's attention span, even my own, like attention span is just like nothing now. It's almost impossible to like spend more than a minute looking at one thing, because then immediately it's off to the next thing. So
Yeah.
that is a huge challenge as a visual artist, especially nowadays.
Yeah. And another thing I thought was really interesting, you mentioned you might be reading or, it would inspire certain thoughts or ideas you wanted to explore. Kind of what other places do you draw inspiration from, or kind of what ignites that spark in your mind that's like, oh, I want to make a painting?
I think it's hard to pinpoint where it comes from. It's more about the action of acknowledging it and using it. I think everybody has that creative aspect. And I think it's similar to any sort of skill, is like you have to recognize how it functions for yourself, and then you have to try to build on it. And so for me, I can't really pinpoint when something creative hits me. Like I could be, I could be scrubbing the pool, and then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, like we got something here. And like, then it's like, okay, do I hold on to that idea? Do I make room for new ideas? And if I hold on to that idea, how do I want to hold on to that idea? Do I immediately want to jump into an image of it, or do I want to jot it down into like my journal in here and come back to it later? Or do I want to combine this idea with something I'm already working on and see how that interacts? And so it's sort of this complex puzzle of like taking new information and new ideas and seeing how you want to manipulate and or express those ideas or images. But then you also, it's really complex. Maybe I overthink it too, because then I also think about like, okay, I have all of these images. How does this image relate to everything else I've done? Because you want to build a voice and you want to have like a clear theme of what your work's about and what your process is and why you choose to do those things. Inevitably, I tie a lot of it back to like my internal feelings. Like I did, there's a large painting that I did. It's called Off the Boat, and it's about 5 feet tall. And it's a painting originally of like Mexican labor workers, but it's actually originally a copy of a Spanish painter named Joaquin Zarola. And I was teaching like Impressionist painting to students.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a Spanish Impressionist, and I fell in love with his work. And I wanted to explore it a little bit, but I also have no desire to make my paintings look like his paintings. Even though I love his paintings, it's like,
Yeah.
I already nailed it. Why am I going to try to do that? So instead, I'll take the imagery and like use that as like a really loose structure, and then I'll go from there. And as I'm working on the painting, I paint in a mixture of like figurative. So I'll paint something kind of figuratively, and then I'll change it to abstract. So like I'll lower the canvas completely flat, and like literally I'll take like a glove and squirt paint in it and just rub it all over the painting after I spent, 12 hours developing a bunch of stuff.
Paint, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then let that dry and build back into it and create this image. But the reason why that image was sticking out to me is it's like my family's, like I was saying, my family's immigrants, but I don't look like an immigrant family. Like when people see me as kind of just like a jolly, goofy white kid in Chandler, Arizona, I think some people might struggle to see that I can fully empathize with like a family that doesn't speak English. And like my grandpa came here with $5 and like,
Right. Doesn't have a support system of people around them that they know and
yeah, they weren't
turn
born
to for
into
help.
money.
And
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
exactly. Like it's a complex history and it's a complex feeling. And that's what I was saying a little bit about Chandler is like, when you know that, like when you witness it, like I was really close with them. Like my grandpa and I were really good friends. And, so much that like it's kind of eerie, but he passed away the day before my birthday holding my hand. Like we were like tight people, and like he was a little adventurous too. So when I would go do my adventurous things, like just before that I was in India for a month and I came back and he was still in the hospital and he was like wide-eyed, like tell me everything.
Yeah.
So just having that feeling, that deep-rooted feeling that I can really kind of tap into and like understand on a personal level, and trying to express that, but also kind of hide it behind some layers of like imagery so that it's not so like, this is about me and my grandpa. It's more about like, this is a feeling that like, this is about people who come to America to try to make a better life. And I can fully empathize with that because I've experienced it in my own family. So like it's kind of fun to take these complex images and then try to, I think I always need to have a tie back to my personal life so that I can stay engaged while working on it.
So fascinating. I know for me, I'm very analytical, like very mathematical. And so, I mean, I like to scrapbook. I consider myself also a little bit creative, but
Hey, that's
it's
creative.
not on the, it's definitely not on the same level. So hearing about, you know, your process and the, like for me, when I scrapbook, it's a very cut and dry, like it's not, like I go in with a plan, but it's not nearly this complex, right? Like it's so fascinating to me to hear about the different layers, all the different aspects, the feelings, the thoughts, you know, that, and all the planning that goes into it. So I'm just floored listening to this because it seems like I'm not trying to be like rude or anything, but it's so easy for a layperson like me to be like, well, it's just a painting. Like
Totally.
it's hard skill, but like how, you know, but it's because we're here and the painting's like way up there. Like it's just right over our heads, you know? So hearing about this is amazing. You know, it's opening up a whole new world and I'm just loving it.
That's the exciting challenge too, is like, I love what you said, is it's like, sometimes it does go over people's heads. And like, that's the fun challenge, is like, how do I take all this not dumb, but like complex bullshit
Not
that
dumb at all.
Sophisticated. Yeah.
Sophisticated
and then
and
like
complex.
kind of get it into this area so that I can like serve it to people in a way that's like, oh, I see what you're doing. And I love that challenge. It's always been probably one of my favorite things about making paintings and about making art in general. And the artists that I've always looked up to have always done a good job of creating something extremely dense and complex and thought-provoking and interesting and also challenging, right? Like things that were like, I don't really like reading that because it feels like you're talking about me, and that sucks.
Yeah, you gotta push a little, right?
But I love that because they're so good at expressing it in a way where like I'm not some sort of genius. Like I grew up in public school in Chandler and like barely graduated high school. Like I'm not some superstar when it comes to like the I guess the complex theoretical part of the art world. But they're able to break it down in a way where like some skate rat from Chandler could understand it. And I was like, that's tight. Like that's cool because like it is complex. It's a challenge, and it's something that when I leave, I'm going to still think about for a little bit.
Right.
And it's tied into an image where like when I think about that idea, I have this cool image now is stuck in my head. But at the same time, it's expressed in a way that I can understand. And then on the flip side, this is where like art is such a weird game to play. On the flip side, though, it's super fun to not tell anybody shit. Be like, you figure it out.
Let them interpret it.
You figure it out. I don't know. I made the damn thing. Now you do the hard work of figuring it out. Because like sometimes it's super easy to get so involved in all this like that when you get done with it, you're like, actually, none of that makes sense. So I'm not going to tell anybody that. Like I'm just going to give them like a little bit of a title and allow the narrative quality of the painting to guide someone else through it. You know, like I want someone to see this image kind of get a concept for it. And I never fully disclose, like what I was doing with that painting just now, I'll never fully disclose that in like an artist statement for a show, because when I do that, then it's like, here's the idea, you don't have any work to do, and where's the fun in that? Like when you go to an art show and you see a painting and you're like, what in the hell is this? But you kind of keep coming back to it because you're like, maybe that person's doing this, or well, maybe this means that, or why is this painted that way? And it kind of, you have a lot of freedom to develop your own narrative for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's equally as important too in art, is allowing the viewers to establish their own meaning, because their own meaning for that painting is equally as valid as your meaning for it when you create it.
Right. And that kind of goes to what you're talking about with the painting with your family. Like, it's not just, here's the story of me and my grandfather, right? It's like, here's this broader human story that so many people can connect to in their own kind of separate way, but still like relate to it in that moment. So.
Right. And I think, a major drive for me is empathy. I think
you guys are such good friends. He's really empathetic too. Yeah.
Poor friggin' William has to just deal with all of our trash at work, dude. That team is so loud and dysfunctional, and he's just like, okay, like, let's go. But no, I think it's a super powerful tool to develop, is empathy, because, no one likes being scared. No one likes getting hurt. No one likes feeling like an outsider. Everyone loves to have fun and like be goofy. My sister and I were talking about this last night, and we both agreed, like, everyone secretly loves to be kind of shitty. Like, being kind of like rude and like bad is like so fun. Like, it's so fun. Like, to kind of like talk trash about someone behind their back. Like, it's wrong morally, but everyone loves to do it. Like, it always feels a little good when you do it. So it's like everyone shares so many feelings. And so like trying to keep that in mind and learning how to understand all the people around you and express yourself in a way that helps others not just see me, but see each other differently. And I think it's a tall order. I don't know if I'm successful.
Yeah, it is definitely a tall order.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a fun challenge.
So we're going to switch gears here a little bit. So you are married. So how long you and Sarah are, correct?
Yeah.
How
and you got the spelling right. No H. Nailed that, dude. Nailed that.
How long have you and Sarah been married?
It's been a year since November. So November 2020 was year one. It's been rocky, I'll tell you that. Good God. Barely made it through the year. She's super fun. I love her.
She's gonna watch this and be like, "Oh, really? News to me."
Oh, she'd be like, "Oh, I didn't even know we were married." She and I have only grown stronger in this year of marriage. And what's crazy is like the way that our lives have played out, that this year of marriage has been like the most stable year really in our lives. Because before that, we met at one of my art. I'm leading into the next question. I'm reading your minds and I'm leading into the next question. We met at one of my art shows, and I was very drunk, and I had like invited her to a bar we were going to that night. But she also showed up with her ex-boyfriend, who I did not like at the time. I didn't know her yet, but I had known him. He was like a buddy of like one of my close friends, and back then he and I just didn't really see eye to eye. We weren't like homies at all, and so she showed up with him, and I was kind of like, all right, I'm gonna back off. And then like it didn't help that at the time we always went to the same bar in Tempe, and one of my coworkers at the time, like just a platonic friendship, she was having a bachelorette party and they were in Tempe, so like, oh, we'll come and meet you at Casey's. And they're like all coworkers of mine, so it wasn't like sick, I got this bachelorette party.
Yeah.
But, like, she shows up with her ex-boyfriend and I'm surrounded by a bachelorette party, so that didn't go well at all. Like none of it went well.
Yeah,
it's a testament that you guys were meant to be, given that.
Yeah, that was like that's like one of those experiences where it's like, well, this clearly is the wrong step,
Yeah.
But then some time passed. I think it was like 6 months or something, and she was sneaky. She was on a mission. She like had added me on Instagram, and then I didn't add her back because I wasn't paying attention, because I was like, I was really
okay, so random person.
Yeah. And so she unfriended me and friended me again, so she'd see the friend request, and then I was like, oh, sick. So I followed her, and then we just started kind of chatting back and forth. But the reason why she started hitting me up again is because we were out both living around Tempe, and I like opened the door for her at like a shop in Tempe, and she's like, "Oh, I remember this guy," and like we started talking again. But yeah, we've been married for a year. Before we got married, we moved a few times. I went to jail for a sec. Got arrested on luckily I didn't do the crime, so that was a nice part, but the whole
Yeah.
getting arrested part sucked ass. And
That.
that was like literally we moved into our first apartment together, moved into like the trashiest shit. It's got a bunch of roaches everywhere. Our neighbors are openly dealing methamphetamine, like literally all around us. And then out of everybody there, I'm the one that went to jail, which was really strange. And that was literally like apartment one. That was like 7 months into us. Like, I think we moved in together after dating for like 3.5 months. Which is crazy. Like, I had never lived with a partner before that. And now I'm like in deep with this lady. And now I'm going to jail, and then we're losing our apartment. And now I'm moving in with her mom, and like, just like pure chaos, just trying to keep ourselves afloat. And this last year has been super cool because in this time, like we've both focused on trying to get to our career goals, not simultaneously, because that'll never really happen. You can't always hit the same point at the same time, but like we've tried to maneuver so that each one of us can focus on the things that we need to do and want to do. And so she finished getting her degree before this last school year, and then she got hired, and now she works as a pre-K teacher at the school that she went to school at as an elementary school.
That's cool.
Yeah, her coworker is like her old kindergarten teacher. So it's
that's like Sarah's brother. My sister-in-law, her brother works at the same high school that he went to as well.
Yeah, and that's huge because that's like, you know, people there, you're comfortable there, you're used to it. And she crushes it as a teacher. She's like so much better than me as a teacher, which is awesome though, because like I have this huge passion for art. And sadly, not sadly, but realistically, I just don't really have that for teaching, because like the art is my first love, and that's kind of been my career goal for years. And to see that sort of passion and like drive develop in her for teaching, and seeing how hard she works at it, has been really exciting and like motivating, and like it's attractive watching your wife work really hard, you know, and like for herself too, like for her own goals and shit. So it's like, it's cool. So this last year has been really awesome. Marriage is a fun experience. You know, it's a little nerve wracking at first for sure, but after like
what was nerve wracking? Like you guys had already lived together. Like
we
been through a bunch of like what was nerve wracking?
Like, you know, it's an acknowledgement of okay, like this is someone I'm committed to for the rest of my life. And if you take that seriously, it's really intimidating, not because you're worried in the near future of any problems, but because humans develop and change throughout their life multiple times. And like, as you get older, maybe a little bit less. And so the goal is to develop like good habits before you're too old and but you acknowledge it. Like my parents are high school sweethearts. They met when they were 16 and like started dating in high school, and they are still together. They're married. They live in South Chandler, like literally 2 miles from where we work. I just saw my mom yesterday on my way home from work. So it's, but they're very open to me about what that experience was like, and like the different shortcomings either one of them had in their relationship, and the fallouts they've had, and the difficult hurdles that they've had to get through, and the challenge of having a family. And like, and I'm grateful for those really honest conversations with them, because I knew going into marriage, it's like the person I'm marrying is a rock star in her own right, but she's also a human being, and like she is going to fail. And like, I am a human being and I fail a lot, like a lot. And I know that her agreeing to be with me for the rest of her life is like a huge ask, because I know I fail a lot. So it's like, that's the intimidating part, is like, you want to make sure that like you're okay with when things fail, acknowledging there's a failure, and then moving forward with it. And I think that takes a lot of maturity and a lot of getting used to. So that part was a little nerve wracking, you know? And at the time I was like a huge hoe when Sarah met me. So like, I was really used to hoeing it up. And now like just she'll tell you, she'll be the first to tell you. So like that was a big transition for me too. So just being like straightforward into marriage was a little intimidating, but it's fun. We had a dope wedding. Our wedding was like right before COVID hit, so luckily it wasn't
Yeah,
shut down.
everybody was.
Our bartender had to leave because he got too high. Like it just got like, that was one of our bartenders had to leave because of that. The other one got too drunk. My uncle bagpiped.
Who are your bartenders?
Just homies, just homies from like my Sarah used to work at like the Hyatt Regency Hotel, and like same thing with both of her brothers. So like they know everyone there. So like the bartenders that work at this like resort came to like bartend the wedding, and like,
Oh, nice.
yeah, we paid them with like booze.
There's a good time had
like,
by everybody.
ooh, yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy wedding. We had like 180 something people in her dad's backyard.
What?
Like,
180?
yeah, we like, and both families like to party. Like my family likes to party, her family likes to party. So it was a wild time. It was sick. I was a big fan. I'd do it again.
So do you have any like advice for us, my fiance and I, as we are about to get hitched here in August?
Yikes, guys. Your life is definitely going to get way more difficult. I'm kidding. It's not going to happen. It's going to feel the same. I get it takes a little bit of getting used to. It's interesting once it becomes like legal, that's like, whoa, shit, we're stuck together. But how long have you guys been together?
Since
2015, I think.
Yeah.
Since 2015?
Yeah.
Oh, you have nothing to worry about. You guys will be fine. It's it's because of the label, right? It's intimidating.
Yes.
Like if you love like skipping stones on water, it's easy to do. But like if someone's like, oh, you're professional at that now, you're like, oh shit, like I better be on my A game. Where it's like your relationship's already your relationship, but as soon as you're like, oh, now you're married, you're like, whoa, like it's not good enough.
All this pressure on it, and we've kind of talked about this before. Like we don't really see much changing once we get married. Like, and like being in this pandemic, it was like when are we going to get married? Like, but like in reality, like there is no rush because hopefully, or at least in my mind, I don't see much changing in like our day to day, like in anything that we do.
Right. Like we've already been living together for like 4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Our finances are already all together, so I mentioned that because my parents are divorced, and I think a big contributor to that was like the financial situation. So in my mind, like I always have a chip on my shoulder about like money, right? And sharing, like different people have different attitudes towards spending, saving, and so that to me is always like an area where I'm like, ooh, sensitive. You got to make sure that both people are on the same page and everything. So I kind of agree with Will, but I definitely hear what you're saying in terms of like, right now we feel like nothing's going to change except for that label. And so it's kind of that concept of, well, there's no going back, or like this is, even though this is what we wanted, this is what we planned, it's like final, right? Like this is it. So I can definitely see that kind of label and heightened pressure, but I also agree, on the day-to-day, I don't expect anything to really change.
Yeah, nothing's
I'll call you husband.
Yeah, it actually, and I agree with that. The finance thing is a big one, and I think, Sarah's parents are divorced too. And I think that was a big thing moving into getting married, for her, because her experience with marriage is vastly different than my experience and understanding of it. And communicating about that, and like communicating about expectations or kind of expressing a lack of expectation is also super important, and the big thing, Sarah and I are very different people financially too. Our finances are combined, and now we're trying to save for a house. So we're putting money in savings. I don't know how she does it. She somehow manages to put way more money in savings than me, but also buys like clothes more often in like the last 6 months than I've bought clothes in like the last 10 years. And I'm like, how are you doing that? But my big thing is I buy food. Like I love to eat. I'm a big food guy. I'll go eat any time of the day. It's just when you're kind of a big body, you got to go eat sometimes, you're kind of like, oh, lunch sounds good.
To your body.
Like, do I need a burger today? Never have, but will I get a burger today? Yeah.
Oh,
you
we
know?
will. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so like, that's where my money goes. And so that is sort of a challenge to get used to. But like you guys said, if you're already combining that and like kind of already used to living together, I think marriage, it's really hard if you're not used to those things and those tough conversations and like those late night stressors of like you guys being on complete different pages and feeling like you'll never meet in the middle. And then 2 months pass and you're like, okay, like we're here, you know?
Yeah.
There's definitely been some of those.
Yeah, of course. And that's just part of, you know, two individuals trying to
Indeed.
coexist. I do think, you know, what's fun is that that label kind of adds like a strength to the relationship. And, you know, in today's culture, there's, you know, all sorts of various different ideas that come with marriage and what it represents. But I know for Sarah and I, it was like, you know, when I see a picture of her and she's looking good, I'm like, that's my wife, you know, like got that thing wifed up, you know what I'm saying? Or like when we're out in public and like people are like, oh my God, is that your wife? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, she's so cute. And I'm like, I know, like, that's why I put a ring on it. Like, it's like, that's my, you kind of get a little like, yeah, I know, it's my wife. What's up? Like, you just feel like
A little
more
proud.
like, not like braggy about it, but you just like, it's easy to be thankful for that, you know? It's because it's like already so upfront and like it's not like, oh, that's my girlfriend, we've been together, blah blah blah, we live together. It's like, oh, that's like my wife. And they're like, oh, okay, that's for real, like that's settled, like
Official.
that's all. Yeah. And it kind of, it almost feels like a little added strength to like your relationship. So it's cool. It's been a fun trip, a fun road ahead. And I'm grateful for that. I think I'm becoming the best version of myself the longer I'm with my wife, which is I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
A great thing to say about your wife.
Yeah.
Like,
She's in the other room with a gun to my head right now. She is serious about me talking nice about her. Otherwise, she is just gonna kick my ass. So I had to.
all right. Well, Marshall, we really appreciate you joining us, man. It's been great. You've given us kind of a insight into Arizona, Chandler, and then into the skating world and
Yeah,
artistic
so
world,
cool.
and even into your marriage, man. We really appreciate it. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your spring break and your Saturday. And
I will.
And hopefully when the pandemic calms down a little bit, the four of us, Sarah included, can hang out, get to know each other a little better. That'd
Oh
be really
yeah,
fun.
love to do that. Yeah, we'll come up to you guys, hang out, show you guys around Phoenix a little bit, but would love to do that. I appreciate you guys taking time with me today and let me chat your ear off. That was tight.
Yeah, we love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, enjoy your
Great.
guys' day as well. I'll see you guys later.
all right,
Thanks.
see you.
See ya.